The air in the lobby hangs thick and still, like a breath held too long. Sunlight streams through the towering windows, hitting the polished marble floor, making it gleam like a sheet of ice. Outside, the city hums, a distant, uncaring beast. Inside, only the soft ping of an elevator breaking the silence, the rustle of paper. He steps out, confident stride, the same expensive suit jacket slung over his arm he always wore when he thought he owned the world. He's laughing, a hearty, booming sound that used to slice through any room we were in, drawing all eyes, including mine. Now it just sounds like a cheap imitation of joy. He doesn't see me at first. I stand near the wall, a statue carved from indifference and something sharper, colder. My lawyer is already there, a quiet man in a gray suit, holding a slender envelope. He stops laughing. Mid-step, mid-boast to whoever is with him, the sound catches in his throat. His eyes flick to the lawyer, then to the envelope. And then they find mine. Across the expanse of marble, across the chasm of everything he destroyed, our eyes lock. For a fraction of a second, the laughter is gone. The confidence evaporates. The suit jacket slips from his fingers and hits the floor with a soft thud. He freezes, truly freezes, like a glitch in the Matrix. His face, usually so quick to charm or to lie, is suddenly blank, then pale, then a sickly shade of green. He knows. He doesn't know what, not yet, but he knows it's coming from me. And he knows it's not going to be gentle. The lawyer steps forward, extends the envelope. His hand shakes just slightly as he takes it. That's the moment. The silence stretches, pulled taut like a wire ready to snap. He looks from the envelope, back to me, standing there utterly still. There is no warmth in my gaze, no sadness, no regret. Just finality. The city outside hums on. The sunlight keeps streaming. And the man who thought he'd walked away scot-free, who'd built his new life on the ashes of mine, stands frozen. The architect of his own ruin finally served the blueprints. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know, bringing these stories, these moments, to life. It started so differently. It always does, doesn't it? It starts with warmth, with laughter, with promises whispered in the dark. It starts with believing this is forever, this safe harbor. We had a good life. Or I thought we had a good life. Looking back, I see the cracks now, the hairline fractures I plastered over with hope and willful blindness. But in the beginning, there was genuine connection. Or I felt it was genuine. He was charming, successful, ambitious. He had dreams, big ones. And I believed in them. I believed in him. We built a home. Not just walls and a roof, but the feeling of safety, of belonging. We talked about the future, about kids, about growing old together on a porch swing somewhere quiet. He worked hard, or appeared to. I worked hard too, building my own small business, a quiet passion project that was starting to bloom. Our finances were separate-ish, enough for independence, but we shared the big picture, the goals. The understanding that his success was our success, my stability was his stability. A partnership. That's what I thought it was. The first sign wasn't a mistress, not a secret text. It was the phone calls he started taking outside. The late nights that stretched later and later. The stress lines etched deeper around his eyes. He was starting a new venture, he said. High risk, high reward. He needed capital. A lot of capital. More than the banks were willing to lend on promises and projections alone. That's when he started talking about his personal debt. It was crushing. He confessed one night, sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Old business failures, bad investments from before me, snowballing interest. He couldn't get the funding for the new venture, with this albatross around his neck. He looked so broken, so desperate. My heart ached for him. This was my husband, the man I loved, the man whose dreams were intertwined with my own. He wasn't asking for a handout, he explained. He was asking for a bridge, a temporary infusion to clear the old mess, get the new, lucrative project off the ground, and then he'd pay it all back, with interest even. It was a lot. Everything I had saved, everything I had built in my own accounts, everything I had planned for my own future. It was years of scrimping, saving, late nights building my own business. It was my safety net, my independence fund. But he needed it. We needed it, I thought. For our future. For our security. He laid out the numbers, showed me the projected returns on this new venture. It seemed solid, plausible. Risky, yes, but life was risky. And we were a team. We faced risks together. I spent sleepless nights wrestling with the decision. It wasn't just money. It was trust. It was vulnerability. It was putting my entire financial future, everything I had worked for myself, into his hands, into our shared future. I did it. I wrote the checks, wired the money, signed the papers at the bank, taking out a loan myself against my assets to cover the rest. It was a staggering amount, a number that made my stomach clench every time I thought about it. But seeing the relief on his face, the genuine gratitude in his eyes, it felt right. It felt like an act of love, of partnership, of building something together from the ground up. He promised me the world. Promised he'd never forget what I'd done. Promised he'd make it up to me tenfold. The initial aftermath wasn't immediate collapse. It was a slow, insidious decay. He seemed relieved, yes. The stress line softened, but didn't disappear entirely. The late nights continued. The phone calls outside kept happening. But the new venture didn't seem to be taking off as planned. There were delays, unexpected costs, he said. More problems. The money I'd given him, that vast sum that represented my entire financial history, seemed to just vanish into the problems. He stopped talking about the new venture with excitement and started talking about it with hushed frustration, then eventually not at all. Then came the distance, the emotional space that opened up between us, cold and wide as a chasm. He was homeless, even when he wasn't working late. He was preoccupied, distant. His phone was always with him, face down. Little things shifted. The way he avoided my touch. The way his eyes didn't quite meet mine anymore. The silence in the car on the way to dinner. A heavy, suffocating silence that spoke volumes. I asked him what was wrong. He was stressed, he said. Worried about money. The venture wasn't going well. He was under pressure. I offered support, tried to talk through solutions, reminded him we were a team. He just nodded, already miles away. The first attempts to bridge the growing gap felt clumsy, desperate. I cooked his favorite meals. I suggested weekend getaways. I left him little notes. They were met with polite smiles, tired excuses, or sometimes impatience. My efforts seemed to bounce off him, finding no purchase on whatever wall he was building around himself. I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. This wasn't just stress about work anymore. This was something else. Something fundamental breaking. Then the texts started appearing. Or I saw them appear on his watch when he thought I wasn't looking. Names I didn't recognize. Emojis I didn't send. Late-night notifications that made my blood run cold. My stomach would lurch. I felt a primal fear, deep in my gut. I tried to ignore it, to rationalize it away. It was just business contacts, right? He was networking. But the feeling persisted, a low thrum of dread beneath the surface of my life. The man I thought I knew was becoming a stranger, hiding behind a veil of exhaustion and stress, while his phone pulsed with a secret life. The disruption came like a punch to the gut I never saw coming, even though the signs were there, screaming. He didn't confess. He didn't sit me down for a tearful conversation. He sent a text message, a cold, clinical text. Said he was leaving. Said he couldn't do this anymore. Said he needed space. He was moving out that day. That day. He was already gone by the time I read it, packing his bags while I was out, reducing our life to boxes and an empty space in the closet. The text was emotionless, devoid of any hint of the years we'd shared, the promises, the sacrifices. It felt like a business transaction, severing ties with an unwanted partner. He didn't even mention the money. Not a word about the massive debt I'd cleared, the loan I was still paying off for him. The world tilted. The air left my lungs. I stood in the middle of our living room, the silent house echoing the emptiness in my chest, reading those sterile words over and over. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. It felt unreal. A bad dream. I called him. It went to voicemail. I called again. And again. Nothing. He just severed. Cut me off. Like I was an inconvenient loose end. Then came the other blow, delivered not by him, but by a mutual friend, trying gently to cushion the fall. He wasn't just leaving. He was leaving for her. The woman whose name I might have glimpsed, whose emojis had flickered on his watch. The Mistress. The reason for the late nights, the phone calls, the distance. She wasn't just a fling. He was building a life with her already. While I was struggling to understand why the man I loved suddenly didn't love me anymore, he was already comfortably ensconced in a new reality, a new home, with a new partner. The betrayal wasn't just infidelity. It was a calculated abandonment, replacing me entirely with someone else, using the very freedom my financial sacrifice had bought him. He'd cleared his debt on my dime, only to walk away and start over clean with someone else. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. The early struggles were a blur of pain and confusion. The emotional devastation was absolute. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was the shattering of my reality, the demolition of every assumption I'd built my life upon. The man I trusted implicitly was a stranger, a liar, a thief of my security and my peace. My heart felt like a gaping wound, raw and exposed. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The house felt haunted by his absence, by the ghost of the life we were supposed to have. Every object was a reminder, the empty space on his bedside table, the mug he used, the faint scent of his cologne in the air. The practical nightmare quickly descended. The logistics of separating a life entwined for years were overwhelming. Bills, shared accounts, sorting belongings. And then there was the financial fallout. The loan I'd taken out to pay his debt was still my responsibility. Payments were due. My own business had suffered while I was distracted and heartbroken. The money I had sacrificed, the vast sum I had given him to clear his past and build our future, was gone. Poof. Vanished with him into his new life. I started digging. Not intentionally at first. It was just the necessity of figuring out finances, of understanding what was left, what was owed. I pulled old statements, looked at the accounts I'd transferred money from, followed the trail of where it went. It went to his business accounts, yes, just like he'd said. It cleared the old debts. But then I started noticing other things. Transfers out. Large sums. Not to suppliers, not to legitimate business expenses listed on the proposal he'd shown me. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Accounts that weren't tied to the new venture, not to his old debts. The rising challenges were no longer just emotional. They were concrete, cold, and terrifying. The financial picture was far worse than I'd imagined. He hadn't just spent the money, he bled it dry. And not just the money I gave him. There were other signs of reckless spending, debt accrued after I thought he was clean. Credit card bills with exorbitant charges I didn't recognize, from places he shouldn't have been, on dates he was supposedly working late. The new venture? It seemed to have stalled completely, or perhaps never really got off the ground. Or maybe the money was siphoned off elsewhere before it ever had a chance. Every discovery was another twist of the knife. The financial records laid bare not just irresponsibility, but outright deception. He hadn't been struggling with legitimate business issues. He had been using the money I gave him, the money I'd worked my life for, to fund what? A lifestyle? Her? It became clear this wasn't just marital betrayal. This was financial malfeasance. The man I had literally paid to get back on his feet had used that freedom to abandon me and potentially defraud me further. The rage began to simmer beneath the grief, a hot, purifying fire. My lawyer, initially hired for the divorce, saw it too. The numbers didn't add up. The transactions were suspicious. He started digging deeper, pulling corporate records, bank statements, tracing the money trail. And the picture that emerged was uglier, more complex, than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just personal debt he'd lied about. It wasn't just the money I gave him disappearing. There were discrepancies in his business accounts, payments to shell companies, funds diverted in ways that looked criminal. The midpoint shift was seismic. The divorce lawyer's tone changed. He spoke in graver terms. "This isn't just about asset division anymore," he said, his voice low and serious. "This looks like something else entirely. Embezzlement. Fraud. Potentially on a significant scale." My heart hammered against my ribs. Embezzlement. The word felt too large, too heavy for the man I had shared a bed with, the man I had laughed with, cried with, built a life with. But the evidence, piece by painstaking piece, was mounting. The money I gave him to clear his debt and start fresh wasn't just mismanaged. It seemed to have been used, at least in part, to facilitate or cover up something much darker. His urgent need for capital, his desperation, was it real, or was it a calculated move to get his hands on a large sum of money, my money, for illicit purposes? Had I been a willing, unknowing accomplice in freeing him up to commit further financial crimes, using my life savings as his getaway car? The thought made me physically ill. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional, financial, potentially criminal. The deepening crisis felt like being caught in quicksand. The legal battle intensified. His lawyers, initially arrogant and dismissive, became defensive, aggressive. They denied everything, spun elaborate tales, accused me of misunderstanding his complex business dealings, of being vindictive, of trying to ruin him. They painted me as the scorned woman lashing out, fabricating charges. It was infuriating. It was terrifying. The system felt overwhelming, slow, and cold. My own financial situation was precarious, depleted by his debts and the ongoing legal fees. There were moments of despair, moments where I wanted to give up. The emotional toll was immense. Reliving the lies, the betrayal, the sheer scale of his deceit day after day in deposition rooms and legal briefs was soul-crushing. He seemed unfazed, confident that he could charm or bully his way out of anything, just like he always had. He saw me as weak, heartbroken, easily defeated. He thought I would eventually collapse under the pressure, settle for whatever pittance he offered, and disappear quietly. But the anger, cold and sharp, kept me going. The knowledge that he had used my love, my trust, and my hard-earned money not just to leave me for another woman, but potentially to fund illegal activities, was a constant fuel. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not really. It was about justice. It was about accountability. It was about reclaiming my life, my financial security, and my dignity from the wreckage he'd made. If he could do this to me, who else had he hurt? Who else would he hurt? The turning point came after a particularly brutal exchange with his lawyers. They were smug, condescending. They spoke about me as if I wasn't in the room, dissecting my finances, questioning my motives, hinting at character assassination if I didn't drop the baseless accusations. I walked out of that meeting shaking, tears blurring my vision, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening into a vice. I called my lawyer from the car, my voice trembling. "I can't do this," I choked out, the words thick with despair. "I can't keep fighting them. It's too much. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should just cut my losses. Take whatever I can get and disappear." My lawyer listened patiently. He didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. He just said, quietly, "Look at the evidence again. Look at the paper trail. This isn't about what they say. It's about the numbers. The truth is in the numbers." I drove home, sat alone in the quiet house, and pulled out the files. The bank statements, the wire transfers, the corporate filings, the canceled credit card statements that first made me suspect something was deeply wrong. I went through them methodically, tracing the lines, following the money. It wasn't complicated business logic designed to confuse. It was simple theft, layered with deceit. Funds moved, disguised, disappeared. There was no plausible, innocent explanation for some of those transactions. Not for the timing, not for the recipients. As I looked at the cold, hard data, the fear began to recede, replaced by a quiet, steel resolve. He had used my vulnerability against me. He had counted on my emotional breakdown to prevent me from seeing the truth hidden in plain sight. He thought he was smart, untouchable. But he had underestimated me. He had underestimated the power of desperation, the clarity that comes when you have nothing left to lose but your fight. He had underestimated the paper trail. I called my lawyer back the next morning. My voice was steady now, devoid of hesitation. "File it," I said. "File the embezzlement charges. File everything we have. I don't care how hard they fight. I don't care what they say about me. He needs to be held accountable. Every single cent. Every single lie. We go all the way." My lawyer didn't ask questions. He just said, "Okay. We'll prepare the documents." "It's a significant step." "I know," I replied. "But it's the only one left." The decision settled in me, heavy but firm. This wasn't just about getting my money back, though that was part of it. It was about stopping him, about exposing him, about proving that some actions have consequences, no matter how charming or how connected you think you are. He thought he could walk away from the wreckage, leaving me buried in debt and despair. He was wrong. And that brings us back to the lobby. The gleaming marble, the silent air, the shaft of sunlight, the ping of the elevator, the rustle of paper. The lawyer stepping forward, the envelope held out, his hand reaching for it, trembling slightly, his eyes meeting mine across the distance. The moment he froze. He opens the envelope. His eyes scan the document. I see the blood drain from his face, leaving it ashen, pasty. His lips part, but no sound comes out. The confidence, the arrogance, the carefully constructed mask of charming success, it shatters in an instant. This isn't a divorce settlement offer. This isn't an argument over alimony. This is a legal document detailing financial crimes. It names specific transactions, specific accounts, specific dates. It names him. He looks up at me again, a frantic, pleading look in his eyes now. He's searching for something, the old me, the soft me, the woman who loved him, who saved him, who he thought he could discard without consequence. He finds only the woman he created, the one who learned the cold language of numbers and paper trails, the one who understood that justice sometimes wears a gray suit and carries an envelope. He stammers something, a garbled question, but I can't hear it, or maybe I just don't care to. The silence in the lobby is too loud. His face is a picture of utter shock, of complete, blindsided disbelief. He never saw this coming. He thought he was getting away with it. He thought I was just a sad story he could leave behind. He thought paying off his debt meant I was powerless, financially ruined, unable to fight back effectively. He thought wrong. He thought clearing his old debts on my back meant a fresh start for him. He didn't realize it just cleared the decks for a much bigger battle. The lawyer speaks to him, his voice calm and professional, explaining the contents of the document, the severity of the charges. I watch it all from a distance, a detached observer in the drama he created. There's no triumph bubbling up inside me, not the kind you see in movies. It's colder than that. A quiet, weary satisfaction. A sense of inevitability. He made his choices. And now, the consequences are here, in an envelope, in a sterile corporate lobby. I don't say a word. I don't need to. The papers speak for me. The truth, finally brought to light in the cold language of law and finance, says everything. He stands there, clutching the envelope, the color gone from his face, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. He thought he was pulling the strings. He thought he was the clever one. He didn't realize the debt he owed wasn't just financial, it was karmic, and it was about to be repaid with interest. The aftermath wasn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a different one. The legal battle was long, draining, and emotionally brutal. He fought tooth and nail, denying, deflecting, attacking. But the paper trail didn't lie. The evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, facing mounting pressure and undeniable proof, he folded. Not with a confession, but with a plea bargain, a settlement that acknowledged the financial wrongdoing, required him to repay a significant portion, though never truly compensating for the years of pain and lost potential, and carried consequences that impacted his career and his future prospects. It wasn't total victory in the way a movie wraps up with a neat bow. I didn't get back every cent, not directly anyway. The process cost me dearly, financially and emotionally. But he faced accountability. His carefully crafted image was tarnished. He learned, the hardest way possible, that you cannot build a new life on lies and theft without the foundation eventually crumbling. The woman he left me for, well, she didn't stick around once the truth about his finances and his character fully emerged. Turns out, betrayal is less attractive when you're facing fraud charges. Standing here now, in the quiet of my own reconstructed life, there's no jubilation. Just a deep, abiding weariness and a quiet strength I didn't know I possessed. The experience changed me fundamentally. It stripped away my naivete, hardened my edges, taught me the brutal lessons of trust and betrayal, and the cold power of financial facts. The scars are still there, invisible but real. But I rebuilt, piece by piece. My business recovered, stronger, fueled by a fierce independence. My financial security, once shattered, is slowly being restored. And the silence in my home isn't empty anymore. It's peaceful. It's my own space, built on my own foundation, financed by my own efforts. He froze in that lobby, blindsided by a consequence he never imagined. He thought he was just navigating a messy divorce. He didn't realize he had committed financial suicide. And I, the heartbroken wife he left behind, became the unlikely architect of his downfall, armed not with vengeance, but with bank statements and a quiet, relentless pursuit of truth. It was a dark chapter, one I would never choose to relive. But surviving it, fighting through it, and standing firm when everything told me to collapse, that transformed me. The greatest victory wasn't seeing him fall, it was finding the strength to stand back up, taller and more resilient than ever, on the solid ground I built for myself. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.